All right. Welcome back everybody. We are here. I think this is episode 3. They say the first episode's the hardest. The second one is also pretty hard cuz you got to do it again. But by the third time, man, it's a regular thing now. You can't get rid of us. We are all back. And who are we? We are the AI Psychosis podcast. Here, headlined, I am Paul Chin Jr., and we also have Ryan Jones, the founder of SLS Guru. We got Almir here in the corner with us, security expert and longtime tech person, seen a lot of stuff. And Jonathan, the awesome marketing person and show producer. So all of the fun stuff you see on screen, be sure to give him lots of props and applause for Jonathan. Well, for all the people who are joining us now, thank you so much. We are a group of folks at SLS Guru who kind of got tired of all of the ridiculous headlines we saw and decided to process it all together amongst ourselves and share that conversation with everybody else. And we have a pretty good time, and we hope you will too. And so the format and what we do is we bring up stories from the week about AI and kind of how ridiculous it has become, and pair that up with our decades of experience in developing software and working with enterprise companies. So, with that, Jonathan, I think we got our first story. We can bring that up.
Perfect. I It's the one thing I forgot to get prepped up, Paul. I'm so sorry. I'm getting it up right now. If you wanted to start launching into talking about it a little bit, I'll get the image
Well,
up in
I will
just a second.
say the first story is one that I'm excited about because it's the one that I brought. It's from 404 Media, and a researcher at Microsoft took the video game Age of Empires 2. Are y'all familiar with this video game, Age of Empires? It's a real time strategy. You ever play any of it?
Oh yeah, I spent a good portion of my life.
Okay,
I
great.
think
That's
it's
even
probably
better.
one of the first games that I ever played, to be honest, on my computer. I mean, with my
There
brother.
you
So
go.
yeah,
AOE, baby. AOE. And so it's for those of you in the audience that don't know, it's a video game. It's a real time strategy game. It's where you like build out kingdoms and you have resources and you have workers and they fight each other. But the story is that this Microsoft researcher took Age of Empires 2 and was able to build a NAND gate in it. And once you have logic gates, then you have bits, and he used like the goats as bits and the way that they travel as signals. Okay, so he broke down computation into its most basic forms and mapped those to the primitives of AOE. With that, he built a perceptron. Once you have a perceptron, you can then do decision making, and it becomes a neural network if you added enough of them. And the point of it was to show just how easily we anthropomorphize this AI, right? Early on, even before ChatGPT really got big, the language models were getting really good at like producing stuff. Like you would tell it, make me a poem or write about this serverless thing, and it would do it. And because it sounded so human, we started thinking of them as human, and we start to prescribe human qualities to them, but they are not. And then it opens this whole thing of like, is LLMs alive? And clearly no. Like with this demonstration in this game, he shows that, it's just simple bits moving back and forth. And the ridiculous part of it is that we don't, personify the way our other appliances work. But with these chatbots, something else is happening. um Jonathan, what do you think?
I think my mic was muted right there. I think this is something that's really interesting. I was reading through it, and I loved the author's take on using absurdity to kind of break through these kind of arguments of what is and isn't uh, you know uh, happening in the space right now. And something that I found wild was Claude's creators, talking about how the AI chatbot has a constitution and experiences anxiety, things that, like you were saying, we prescribe to humans and not to the tools and services we use, right? Because I think it takes it to this level where if you start prescribing human emotion and thoughts and feelings, it spins out quickly into something that it isn't. And so if you can build something and argue that it's sentient and it deserves, rights and things that we don't give to like something like a hammer, what is the slippery slope? That's something we wrote in the description. Like the slippery slope that it can take is it can go anywhere from there. I think it's opening the door for a lot of harm, really.
Yeah, totally. And the first time I came across, ClaudeBot, OpenClaw, Moltbot was people giving it, quote, soul MDs. They would write out the system prompt and they namespaced it soul, SOUL .md, the markdown file. And I would read some of them and they got into like spiritual realm type of conversations about what it should do and how it should live and the kind of mind frame that it is. And I'm not so sure that is the path of development that we want to be able to take, because in the article he's a researcher and he says we got to put science back into this. We have to put actual numbers and charts back into these things. And that's what I really appreciated about it. Ryan, like, what do you think about building a perceptron out of some digital goats?
I love it. I think like the creativity side of it is pretty amazing. I think any non-intuitive ways of taking things that exist and then modifying them to prove something out is just so interesting. And the people behind that type of stuff just have a very unique brain, and I just love to see stuff like that. So I'd love to see how it develops. And I don't know. I wish that my head would sometimes go deeper into those directions than it does, because I hear something like that. I'm like, oh my gosh, turning goats into, what do you say, goats into bits or something?
Yeah,
it's crazy. So
yep.
Oh man, yeah.
Wasn't it part of like the article? Sorry to jump in. That like the goats, like I'm not as familiar with how these things work. So I think this is actually why it's so fun that I'm on this podcast. Is I get to like, my mind feels like it's expanding each time I hear you guys talk about how things work in a way that I don't really have much experience with. But I think part of the article is that like the goats will pass along information and will load in and load out. And is it like, are those goats dying? Right? Like if those are real, right?
Yeah,
like,
they get consumed.
They get consumed, right? And it's like, it's just like, if you start prescribing like human emotion to that, like I'm killing goats by doing this thing, it's like, is that truly what you're doing, or is it just like a way to show how information is being traveled, right? Like, or how information is traveling. I think that was like such an interesting take on it, because then I like, weirdly enough, I couldn't help it. I started feeling bad for the goats who don't exist and aren't real, and it's like it preys on human emotion so well. If we see like a little smiley face in anything, we start prescribing things like feelings like a pet rock or some sort. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there, that was like a really interesting part of the article for me.
That does make me think, are the people who are so psychosed by AI listening to it all the time, is that the first time you think that they've really felt empathy and they're doing it through the machine? And because it's a machine, like, they're like, oh, I am empathetic with this machine, and they haven't had enough empathy in other places in order to know the difference. I mean, I find myself getting sucked into the machine too many times, like it'll tell me something and I think, yeah, this will be great. And then you get stuck there. It's because you're empathizing with the machine. Jonathan can actually empathize with the bits, where they go. Does a bit dream? That might be the next sci-fi frontier. What if bits are conscious?
That sounds like diagnosis more than something else. I mean, playing God doesn't make you God. So what would you say for people who are okay? If you are playing like games where you are ending life of some sheep or goats, what would you tell about the person who is playing Call of Duty or GTA? So does that make you thug, or I don't know, or some kind of murder or whatever? So
I mean
that's just a game, and there is AI in there. There's a really clever solutions there, and it feels so real. It feels so good. But at the end of the day, you just shut down your TV and you are back to real life. I mean, if you ever left it. So,
that's what makes AI so dangerous.
Yeah, this whole thing reminded me of Rick and Morty with the butter passing robot.
Yes.
I think you guys are pulling it up.
Yeah. What is
Defying
my
his
Oh,
butter?
butterness.
Ah!
It's like, oh my god. And he's like, yeah, welcome to the club, pal. It's like, so I don't know. When you told me that story just now, I was just like, okay, this sounds like the butter passing AI robot that's actually super intelligent and probably is a sentient being, that's just constructed into form to only pass butter. And I think, he did that on purpose too, right? Because he's a mad scientist. So
Yep. Yep.
yeah,
When
interesting
I think
future.
it's Michael Pollan, the writer, researcher who did like on food and just did a thing on psychedelics. His newest thing is about consciousness, and his newest book is on consciousness. And I was watching a thing about it, and then AI snuck in without even like it was like a jump scare. I was trying to evade AI news, because it comes from everywhere. And I'm like, oh, I'll watch some Michael Pollan stuff. This will be cool. This will be scientific. Halfway through, he's like, is AI conscious? And I'm like, no, I wanted to get away from AI.
you
But
see how? Sorry.
no, but his idea of consciousness was cool. It was a subjective experience, not an objective thing, a subjective thing, something that we can interpret, because it's not like an inside outside thing. It's just, can we experience? Is there a subjective experience in there? And AI LLMs don't have a subjective experience, right? That's the metaphysical question.
You see how absurd this is, and this is the perfect time, Jonathan. If you can bring up that article about ChatGPT 2.0, which Ryan shared a few days ago, and that didn't age well. So what? So it was it. So they created something that was so dangerous that it should not be released at all. It probably has so maybe we are going to have rise of the machines. Maybe we are living in a Terminator movie. Maybe, my God, what's happening?
We got to bring Will Smith back, right, to fight the robots for us.
Yeah, and that model is ridiculous compared to. I mean, it's awesome. It's a breakthrough. It's everything, but it's not what is being advertised on and on. So we had this. Like announcement like oh, we have something and it's too dangerous to be shared with the public, and then again a couple of years later we have something that is too dangerous. Then we have models that doesn't want to shut down, which basically is a bug in the code. And then we have, but it's not interpreted that way. It's interpreted like oh, no, they have like okay, this is it, this didn't age well. I guess. So advanced, it's too dangerous to release. And we are talking about ChatGPT 2.0, and we are now at which version? 5.5, I think. So, what do you think about this? I would love to hear your opinions on this.
I mean, first thing I think is, this is from February 19th, 2019, as you said, and it's like fear sells. Oh man, if you had bought anything semiconductor or even AI adjacent at all, I think you're in 1,000+% returns across the board. And obviously, we know that this is not chameleon-like. It's a convincing. Not even a convincing. It's like a wow. I mean, I get it that it was a breakthrough in terms of how they were allowing, like it was parroting back information in a way that sounded as if there's intelligence there, but at that differentiation, or that, I don't know, differential, if that's the right word, between what is a parrot and what is intelligence, and what is mimicking and what is actually like conscious
Stochastic
understanding.
parrot is what they called it.
Yeah, stochastic parrot. So it's like that difference matters a lot, but it is very, I think, we get into these levels of complexity where it gets so deep into the weeds of things. There's so much vocabulary that immediately bubbles up. It's like, how can you even have that type of conversation? So if we're talking right now and someone sends me a message, and then I talk to GPT-2 and it kind of responds back in a way that feels like there's something there, it's like you have to then pull apart all of consciousness to then really understand what it is or isn't. And I think that's where, I don't know, I don't want to say everyone sort of just reads the title now or reads the headline and then doesn't read the article. I definitely have fallen prey. I definitely do this too, obviously. But in that way, if you're not actually going deeper into the subject and just sort of skim through it, yeah, I could see how that would be, as they described, a scary revelation. But obviously we know now with hindsight, using our hindsight bias, that they've continued to repeat this process with every single release that they've had. And at every single point, it's actually been shown not to be what they're saying. And so after, it's like they have that thing of, I'm going to say it wrong, someone can correct me, but it's like, fool me once, shame on me, right? Or shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times. What do they say? I don't know after that. But, so does anyone know? Is it?
I don't know. All I can think of is the bad George Bush quote is like, can't get fooled again. Like,
yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Like, yeah,
so I don't know if
it
continues past that. Yeah, so maybe just 2 is fine, but it's like, if they do it 2 times or if they do it 3 times, it's a pattern, right? And so at that point, this is just pure fear marketing. And it obviously works. You say there's going to be mass job loss, etc. You click on that, you view it, you take it seriously, you go, oh my gosh, whole world's going to be changed overnight. Drop of a hat, everything's different. Everything that you knew before is gone. Knowledge is democratized. White collar jobs are going away. You know what I mean? It's like all this stuff. It's like, and then, fast forward from 2019 to now, we're 7 years later, 7.5 years later, and we're seeing software engineer jobs rise. We're not seeing the job replacement wholesale happen. And these sort of promises are not actually these fear promises, which I think other people, which I feel bad saying this on the podcast, but the fear porn side of things, right? Where it's like, hey, people just love to consume it. They get addicted to it. And it's like, and I love that stuff, but for a different reason. I'm completely consumed right now by the financial doomsday sort of side of the equation. So I have my own bias, but I'll let some other people jump in on GPT-2 and fear. So
I will say I have a recent experience. So earlier this week, I was in Indianapolis for the AWS Community Day, where we were given a talk, proudly sponsored by SLS Guru. It was awesome. What I noticed there was I gave a talk about sort of my origin story and the kinds of computer science things that I've learned. And I had actually been a professional photographer for a couple of years, way back in like 2008, 2009. And at that conference now, almost, was that 18 years later? Gosh, it's 2009. Almost 18 years later, there was just, instead of a photographer doing headshots, there was a booth, and it was a camera with a ring light, and it was AI enabled. And it was like a commercial thing. It was called a pop booth. And you would go up, you scanned a QR code, you filled out a form, and the screen told you what to do: get closer, get farther away, like position yourself here, smile, and it starts taking pictures. And then you get to choose from your pictures, and it'll like change the background and like make your skin look better and all of that stuff. But it really wasn't that great of a picture, to be honest. Like, I felt like the headshots that I've had from regular humans made a lot more sense, because when it got set up, it was set up by people who did not know anything about cameras or taking pictures. So where they had set it up, it was strongly backlit. And so every picture was just sort of like, the AI, to its credit, did its best in a challenging exposure situation. But most people, they just don't know. And I looked at it and I was like, oh yeah, if this hadn't been placed here, probably would have had better results. And that's kind of where I'm at with all of this stuff, right? Like, you just got to know a little bit more about it. But when you turn it all over to, I don't know, just a software process, a lot of that nuance gets lost.
Isn't that the same as everyone can write code, everyone can take photo, everyone can take professional photo, everyone can make art? Well,
It's not
it's kind
true.
of good analogy, I think.
I was
What
actually
does
going to
that
jump in
say?
with this. I heard I wish I couldn't, I tried to look it up while you were talking, but I couldn't find it. But maybe anybody that's listening can. And it was a story around how after iPhone and phone started to have a camera on it, and it was like, oh my gosh, it's the destruction of all photographers and the entire market's going to collapse and so on. As a result of it, there's actually more photographers that are actually working today after everyone had a camera in their pocket than before. And I think it's to your point, which is to get a really high quality photo with the right like lighting and the right angle and landscapes and everything else. Like I don't know, all the words that I don't. But in that story, it was actually the opposite. Everyone has a camera, but every photo that comes from a camera sort of looks the same. It sort of averages out, and then the ones that have professional photos, I mean, they look immensely better. It's not even within the same ballpark. So yeah, kind of an interesting counterintuitive, thing. So
That does remind me of another story that we brought, Jonathan. The one about oh goodness, I done lost it now. The one sorry. I'm in the wrong channel. I
No, you're good.
apologize.
I actually was able to. Is this the one you're thinking about, Ryan? Or no? Was it an article about how it's better now? Because this is one from like 12 years ago where they're saying that smart cameras and smartphones are like the death of photography. Maybe this is a
it might be.
different. This might be a different, in different context, but
I
I know
found it now.
that's what they're writing. I mean, obviously, that's to your point. That's a real article. It looks like from 12 years ago, right? So
yeah. Thank you, The Guardian. Not sponsored by The Guardian. Which
Uh,
article is this?
yeah, so the one about Linus Torvalds, compilers took my job from Almir.
Ah,
That's a perfect segue from photography to robo photographers to now compilers took my job.
Yes.
yeah, you can show the image, and I can agree. So I need to give credit. So I don't know what is the origin of this image, who originally made this meme, but I saw this in one of the Jeff Barr's presentations, actually on AWS Community Days here in Sarajevo, and he used exactly this image to talk about the AI and how world is changing, but not in a way it is being advertised. Even though he's like the advocate for everything, Amazon, everything. Um, so the point is he was talking about this, and Werner Vogels talk about this at reInvent, and now a few days back, Linus Torvalds talk about this very same thing. So this was once upon a time, this was the way to input data into the computer. So you give to computer punched cards, and there were people who used to work this. This was a real profession. Put the punch cards and sort them and input them in some specific order, and that was a profession. And suddenly we got keyboards, we got assemblers, and now we got the compilers, and after compilers we got, like we got high level programming languages, and suddenly we have so many people writing code. Everybody now can write code, so it's not anymore. It's so we need to find another job. What happened actually is is a revolution. We have we 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 had higher demand for the programmers once we democratized, or how what is the proper word for the technology. It regular people, not just scientists, got access to the personal computers, and to the compilers, and to programming languages, and to books, and we have a lots of programmers, and demand was just higher and higher. And now they're selling a story again that AI is going to write the code. Now It just replaced compilers. Now AI took my job and now put some I don't know, Visual Studio Code or some kind of editor in the background, and that's just not true. Just that is not true. And not everyone can write code. Not everyone can, and that's a real psychosis. We talked about that in the last episode, but to the point of the Linus Torvalds, and I think Jonathan will share the link in the chat for people to watch the video and his point on this. So all these smart people are talking about that. What they are talking about is not that we are going to be replaced by AI. We need to adapt to the new tools. We are going to use new tools. We are going to generate the code, but we still need to review the code. We need to read that code. We need to approve that code. We need to merge that code. We need to know what we are doing. Otherwise, AI will generate random code, which we call slop, and that's just not okay. So software engineer is a good one. We're not going to be replaced. So that's not going to happen.
I wanted to jump in and kind of mention as well, it's similar to the photography thing we just talked about. The value of an okay photo went way down, obviously, but the value of super high quality photos went way up, and that's because more people now see the value of having their photo taken, right? There's more of a market for it, and so I think, and to your point that you're just making, Amir, it's like the low quality coding, which had a lot of value still previously because you just didn't have a way to generate low quality code in that way. That goes down in value significantly now, and the bar has to increase. So I think, at least I feel very good for past decisions that we've made at SLS to say, hey, you know what? We're going to stick on the front edge of things. We're going to try to be on the front line of technology. We're going to hire seniors that really care about what they're doing and have a lot of experience. And it's been a great strategy for a long time, simply because, how the company actually started is there's a quote I always go back to, especially in the early days of SLS, which is, it's not how many resources you have, it's how resourceful you can be with the resources you have. And I was in a code school, and that's how I learned how to program. And so I recruited people that were around me, but they were junior developers, and there's nothing wrong with junior developers inherently, except for the fact that, well, one, they don't have the experience, but also they don't know if they really love the profession. And I feel like that's what I realized, because the first people that were hired into SLS were actually very junior, and they didn't actually enjoy programming that much. And so I was trying to almost like force feed them with programming when their heart really wasn't in it. And so, after that point, it was like, okay. And I also had to work way harder to try to train and try to manage and try to, be involved and so on everything, as well as trying to make them love it, and that's a really hard thing to do. But then when it was like, hey, you know what, let's just go after seniors only, and we'll just try to make that work. And I think that was like light bulb came on. I feel very fortunate that, obviously I work shoulder to shoulder with all the people on this call and the entire SLS team. And I feel like we're very well positioned in that way, because now when it's like, hey, I can build this thing locally, and I have conversations like this all the time with people where for the first time ever, they've got something like Claude on their laptop, and they're like, hey, I've got this idea. I want to build up this platform. I want to have all these integrations to social media and so on. Then I want to build a content generation pipeline and a bunch of things, right? But they don't know how to do it. And I sympathize with them. But it's like you have that choice. It's like you either go through the process of leveraging Claude, trying to do it locally, but we all know part of software engineering is not the coding process. It's the way in which you think about how you actually take something from an idea to reality, right? That entire sort of end-to-end life cycle of going, this is a gigantic elephant. I have to break it down into small bites, and I have to work through that slowly, and I can't take on too much. Otherwise, it can just turn into this big ball of mess. And so my only advice to that person was just try to do it on your laptop and just use Claude and just connect it to your accounts. Don't think about trying to put this into, real life on a URL, have your team log into it or sell it to other people. Like, don't do that, and only pick one integration, right? It's like, just make it as small as possible, do it on your machine. And then once you're ready to actually take that, and once you've proven out a little bit of it, because obviously Claude and Codex can help you on the sort of initial prototyping, as long as you don't care about what code is being generated and the quality of it, because we're just going to throw it away, right? That's my perspective now. Is I don't want to touch your prototype. Throw that in the trash. Just tell me what it does. Show me what it does, and we'll rebuild the entire thing end to end the right way that's secure and safe. And I feel like that's back to the point that we were just making, which we can switch back to. I feel like that's the new market, and I think the people that are now aware of how software can be so impactful to their life and their business, similar to the photography side, are now looking for people like us to help them do that, which they didn't necessarily know that prior. Although I will say they still haven't figured out that the pricing side is actually very expensive to do these type of things. They think, well, Claude can put something up in 5 seconds. So what do you mean it's going to cost that much to put it into, this whole cloud architecture, whatever that is? So I feel like that's the second, layer of this, right? But, kind of interesting.
What Almir and Ryan, what y'all both said, speaks to what I'm seeing in terms of the accessibility of people coming to programming is higher now than ever. So now that everybody can write code, Ryan's like, should everybody write code? And then that makes me think of just how much more accessible building apps are, and how I feel very blessed that like I went all in on the browser as a platform. I know, Ryan, you said you're working on a desktop app, and I'm sure there's a reason that you're doing it in in a window UI versus in a browser. But I have gotten amazing mileage out of just building stuff in the browser. And I remember maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I really had this choice. I was like, am I going to go all in on, browser cloud, or am I going to use Electron and build desktop apps and build like desktop widgets and, desktop software? And I was like, nah, that's just more stuff I don't really know about. But man, the web keeps cranking along.
Yeah, to your point, I had this idea where I was like, okay, I'm going to try to do a desktop app. I haven't done that. I've been, like you said, I've been the website. The thing that I'm working on, it does work better if there's no way to sort of touch it, I guess. Like you have to download it onto your device and there's no connection to a browser or anything else. Just for extra security there is sort of what my brain is thinking, at least. Still a work in progress. And then I tried to go through this phase of development where I'm like, okay, I've heard people talk about prototyping through AI. I just want to start with like an empty cursor screen. And for those who don't know, which I think everyone listening probably does, Cursor is the text editor that plugs into the different models for software engineers or just anybody looking to build out code with AI. And I just let it sort of run. I gave it my feedback, and then it started getting to the point where I was kind of like dragging the hand and almost like it felt like I was teaching Claude how to do things, and it wasn't showing up in the code. But then the code was so complex at that point where it's like I didn't really want to go through and try to unravel it. I just hit that point where I'm like, I could take this further, but knowing what I know about how software is built, this is just a really awful foundation. And so then I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go read documentation. And so I had this ambitious thing. I don't know Rust. And we have Almir knows Rust, which is another programming language. And I do know Node.js. So I know JavaScript and the backend forms of it and some Python and Java. But I was okay. I'm going to do Rust. I'm going to try to use this front-end framework called Leptos. And I'm going to try to use a desktop application framework called Tari, and kind of combine these things together with all Rust code, which I don't know how to write. And I'm going to use AI to generate all of it. So it's a very ambitious, and even with that, it's just a complete mess in terms of how the files were structured and connecting and the duplication everywhere. We have that principle in coding, which is DRY, right? So dry coding, don't repeat yourself. And it repeated itself everywhere. And what I thought I was doing by trying to do this local emulation of the data, not have a database attached, I ended up confusing Claude so dramatically that it just turned into a ball of flames, So I was like, okay. Now I went back to it. I'm like, okay, let me restart again. I made a new branch called No AI. And I was like, I'm not going to use any AI on this, just completely fresh. And I used, as I was going through the create Tari app sort of flow, it's like, oh, do you want to use Leptos, and do you want to use this and that? I'm like, you know what? I'm going to use React, and I'm going to use Node.js.
Go back to what you
I only use
know.
JavaScript, and now I'm just going back through the process of trying to tap back into where all the different things in my brain sit, so that I can build this out. And I'm going to refresh all the best practices for doing the components and how you do the state across everything, and just come from it from scratch. But where I would say the place that I'm going to use AI on it, which I'm already sort of doing, is more of it just in like light research. I've already, we already had stuff that we were doing, and maybe this is a point to Almir to jump in. So tab completion, where it would give a recommendation while you're still controlling the file structure and the system architecture and everything else, that felt pretty good. And also I noticed, even in the IDE, because I'm using Visual Studio Code by itself, and I turned off the AI stuff, right, because I don't want to see it. As I'm going through that process, you can hover over things, and I mean, it gives you the full description of what it does, and then from the documentation, everything else. That's faster than AI is. I mean, it's amazing. You get all this information of like, oh, I've got this new keyword inside of this file that I don't know. I can hover over it. I can see the description of it. I can use my brain to read through it, skim through it a little bit. Now I understand sort of how this fits into the rest of it. And then past that, if there's anything larger, like I saw that you can do add imports into CSS files now. So I was like, that's interesting. I don't remember, maybe 7 years ago, that being the case. And so I used that with Gemini Pro just to look up, when did this happen, right? Like what is the change here? How does Vite fit into the scheme of things? And so so it's like for the discovery side of like sort of light research, and then wherever possible, just trying to read articles or watch videos on stuff.
That the process you just described, I've been reading commentary of senior developers that are just like, writing code with AI is just not fun. Like, it's not the same process at all. You're not really solving the same issues anymore. And the issues that you are trying to solve with a chatbot difficult when it comes to certain things, like with CSS styling in particular. Like, how do you describe what your styling should be like in just words? And then if you are going to provide a mock-up, well, now you need to have those mock-up skills to begin with. And the reason I'm using the thing is because I don't have mock-up skills. And so it's like this push and this pull that's constantly, coming out of the use of these tools. And it also kind of reminds me of, now that more people have the ability to write code, it's going to open up the entire world, and brains that probably would never have written code before are now going to at least get started. And what we've seen in the actual market is when there's fresh new ideas, that stuff is exciting. Like in the movie landscape, they've recently had 2 breakout like YouTube directors. They got big on YouTube with like creepypasta and backrooms and all that stuff. Like, they have a community, they have an audience. They'd never done a film. And then they get a little bit of funding, like way more than YouTube, but like not crazy Hollywood budgets. They get released, they get promoted well. They're good movies, they do well. And now we get to see a new generation of talent. And that's what I'm really excited about, which is like the opposite of Psychosis, but just seeing the new generation of talent that's going to come out of these tools being so accessible.
I was going to say that, Ryan, you teaching Claude how to code, they're going to be really, if it is sentient, it's going to be really thankful for that maybe one day, a little bit later on. So
you are asking the right questions. You are asking the right questions. That is the way to use AI. So if we are speaking about counter psychosis, if we are talking about normal usage of AI, if we are talking about the things how they're supposed to work, this is the way. So you generated the code, you saw something that you haven't seen before, and you didn't just accept it and merge it to the to the main branch and release it. You actually ask, hey, what is this? Okay, maybe it's okay, maybe it's not okay, I don't know, but first I want to understand what this is, and that is the right approach. So the article that Jonathan is presenting us right now. This is from 2016. And yes, all of these icons that you see are the icons of the JavaScript frameworks. And this is how it was for front-end developers 10 years ago, um, when they wanted to write uh, just a normal landing page. So single page application became a thing. So we had AngularJS, and suddenly we got um, React, we got Vue, we got I don't know. There was like, you see, then the bundlers, then the packages, linters,
It
whatever.
almost seems quaint now,
Exactly.
to
Now
look
you
to
have
look back
models
at it.
every day, new model, every day new thing. Now we have Mythos. Now we have Mythos class models. Now we have some kind of open source model that does everything, and it is much better than it was before. Now we are government is getting involved because it's too dangerous, because it's more dangerous than the dangerous one from 2025, which is far more dangerous than the one they didn't want to release back in 2019. So and what if history teaches something, if we can learn something from the history, this is how it's going to be. Now we are down to a couple of frameworks. Now we have the major players. We have a choice. So these frameworks still exist, and you either prefer, I don't know, Angular, maybe you prefer React, not to name all of those out there, but you prefer something, you use something that you're familiar with, because all of these are tools. How many times you heard like discussion? Yeah, Angular is better than React, and React is better than Angular, and JavaScript is better than Python. Python is better than whatever. No, it's not. There is a tool. There is a use case. So I mean, when you when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? Is that correct? Did I said that
Look,
correctly?
you're
Yeah,
talking to
that's right.
somebody who is fanatically in love with just JavaScript. Like I really don't do
No,
any of the other languages.
I'm big fan of platform. I'm advocating use the platform, and I'm very stubborn with that. So, but to go back to AI, so I highly recommend reading this article, and you will feel the vibes of AI today. So it was JavaScript back then, and if you go back a little bit, if you go back into the history, you will find something else. But not to mention blockchain psychosis. But let's talk only about this. You have AI, you have AI, you have AI thing. You have every day you have new models that are solving the problems that does not exist, but they are solving the problems that other AI models generated. Same thing happened with the JavaScript. We are the frameworks were solving the problem that we didn't have. So it's just be the purpose of what they're supposed to be.
Yeah, there
So
is a
repeating.
never like the JavaScript fatigue and the model choice fatigue, and even now, like you're not a prompt engineer, you're a loop engineer, or you're an agentic developer. And the loop engineer is the funniest thing to me. It was like, look, I'm not a programmer, I'm a loop engineer. I was like, what do you think programming is? It's nothing but loops. Like it's like the loop is like all we got. If we didn't have the
Wait,
loop, like we wouldn't have
is that,
anything else.
sorry for interrupting you, but is that a thing or you just come up with that?
That's a thing
Loop,
now. That's a new one.
no, it's a
That's
thing
serious.
now. Oh,
It's
so
everywhere now.
Almir, congratulations. You're one
Now
of the
I'm missing out.
10,000. You're
Well,
one of the lucky 10,000 that just learned that loop engineer is the newest term for using AI to
you
write
see,
stuff.
every day is an opportunity to learn something new. Thank you, Paul.
That's
I
true.
appreciate it. Now I
Yeah.
now I
Now
know
you can
something
update your
I didn't know
you can update
before.
your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
See,
think I'm just going to call myself a loopy engineer.
There you go. You know
Yeah.
what I
oh,
was thinking of when we're describing this? I couldn't I don't know even know what to look up, but I'm sure it's from some movie or something. But it's like imagine you had to cross this moat, but it's like it's got a depth to it. Okay, so just imagine that. So you're trying to storm this castle. There's like a moat. You got to cross it. The only thing that you can do is sort of send your people to like run into the arrows, slowly stacking bodies higher and higher until like you can walk across it. That's what it kind of feels like for some of those frameworks when you were talking earlier. It's like they were filling the gap of the larger framework just to be eventually run over. And I think like that's a lot of the startups right now are just like you were saying, there's a little gap. We're going to build a startup around it. We're first. This is amazing. And then the bigger company just goes like, oh yeah, whoop, and that's it. And it's like another one's like laid, and they just keep stacking it up until eventually, the bigger players can walk across. I don't know if that's from something, but anyways, so
It should
That
be
is-
crazy.
Yeah, that's something to think about. AI in the wake of a pile of dead bodies in order to storm a castle. That is AI. And on that transition, Jonathan, why don't you bring up your article here, and you bring up your article about how things are being trained to train models, how we can find the media that's being stolen to train models. You want to give us a lowdown of this article?
Yeah, I've actually been really excited to bring this one on. And, just listening to you guys, just to close up the last conversation, you're talking about how things are becoming more accessible. Well, accessible, doesn't always mean like it's production ready or, it's something that is now safe for people to use. Like, I'm not somebody who should take the reins over from Almir if it's coming to something that he's doing in his job security wise or, with anything with programming, just because I can generate code doesn't mean that I have the skills to review and make sure it's safe. It's like if I'm able to weld better now, I'm still beginning to weld. Maybe the tools are really nice and, you can now make joins better than anyone who's tried to weld before. I wouldn't be able to build you a battleship though. It's just because, I have the tools to be able to weld really well. It doesn't mean that the welds are going to be clean or good. Anyway, and I don't know why
That's a great
something.
analogy, actually.
Yeah.
Like that's a really good one.
Why would you go sailing with my ship if you could get one from somebody who actually knows what they're doing? Just because I was able to build one faster doesn't mean I built it safer. So that's like an analogy. And, the boat went over the moat of the dead body. So we're just combining all the different visualizations. But okay, so this is something from the Atlantic called the AI Watchdog, which is a really interesting tool you can use now. I'll share the link after I'm done talking about it, where you can go and you can search different YouTubers, authors, music artists, people, directors, etc. And you can see what AI models are scraping them for their data. So you can see if you are being used to train these models, which, like, let's just drop the pretense. Training data is theft. It's an intellectual property being taken without somebody knowing that it's being used, but it's under the guise of, we have to improve our model by feeding it data, and the data being the hard work, blood, sweat, and tears of these creators who oftentimes didn't agree to it, don't realize it's happening. And a perfect example of this is our very own Paul Chin Jr. Was searched by me, and you have two videos here scraped. It's your fortune cookie pilot yum salad foods video.
Yeah, that was.
Yep.
Yeah, wow. I didn't. You know what? I didn't vanity search myself. I know both of those. Those are like the early viral hits on my YouTube channel from like 15 years ago.
Yeah, well, you're still raking in the views with these because I went through and I tried looking up Ryan as well, but Ryan, your name is a little too generic. I think.
That's pretty nice for now, right? There's no way for me to become the most famous Ryan. It's just impossible.
And I was like, wow, 59 articles Ryan wrote, and like they're all like being Russian in America and all this. And I'm like, unless Ryan has something he's hiding from us, I'm not sure this is necessarily him. But yeah, I looked at Paul, and I clicked on these videos and watched through them. They're great videos, Paul. I see why the AI model scraped them. But did you agree to this? Is this something
I did not? I had no idea. That's like today I learned. I am in a data set. That is bonkers.
Yeah, and so now we have kind of a it's not just the thought of if you're an artist and you're somebody who makes a livelihood off of this. It's normal everyday people who 15 years ago Paul wasn't creating a fortune cookie pilot yum yum salad in order for I just love saying the name out loud for an AI agent to come by, scrape it up, and then cannibalize it for its own use. What could it even be used for, right?
What's crazy about it is both of those are videos, and so the next big frontier is video. Like they really want to be able to crank out real-time video, and they're gonna I'm now just remembering this video, the fortune cookie pilot. It was a cooking show, like a YouTube cooking show idea that I had, and I filmed it in my apartment kitchen. Donna is the host on it because she's the only one I could get on camera, and the cat's in it, and it's cut like it's 2008, man. Like it's old looking now, and I don't know if that data is actually useful for anything, but it's there.
Yeah, but are you attributed or credited?
Never. Yeah, something
that's the question. So that is the problem. That is the problem with all of this. And I know there were some lawsuits, and probably still some of those are ongoing. For New York Times, I think they were the first, or I know some newspapers and some companies were asking about the copyright, and there were some lawsuits. I don't know what is how that ended, or is it ended? What's going on?
I don't think it's over.
I think it's all ongoing. Yeah, I think we're in. If we go back to like December of 2025, when the models really started picking up and agentic and adding tools and neurosymbolic and all this stuff, right? I feel like we're not even a year into this, So I think class action lawsuits take a long time. But man, I mean, it's deeply disturbing what you just showed, Jonathan. It kind of affected me very, very deeply on your behalf, Paul. And I know that you're not the only one out there. So it's like that's just so weird and disturbing. I think I already said that.
The whole open source community is abused. So people donated their time for the open source project, for the things for the community, and now you have commercial models that are not open sourced. Some of them are, but these major players, they do not open source their models, but they are using open source data. And I highly doubt, I don't know for sure, but I highly doubt that all of those are MIT licensed. So MIT is a very permissive license, and you can use it, that's fine. But there are different licenses that are free. If you open source your project, you use open source in your open source project, just to simplify things. If I use open source library, it's free for me, but I need to open source my project, and that's fine. But if I close source my project and it is commercial, I must pay license for that open source thing that I used. So this is the area where it becomes really problematic, with the AI, because the data you use to train, can you prove that they are free to use? Do you have right to use them? And but I don't know how that's going to.
I think somebody had posted about Claude Code making commits as Claude Code, like changing the author.
Yes, like co-author, automatically adding to your. So I don't use Claude Code, but I saw the article that you're referring. So when you make a commit, and if you generated code by the Claude, it adds itself automatically without your consent. It says like last commit by Paul Chin and Claude. Like co-author.
Yeah, it's one thing if I were to set up my own agent and I wanted to give that agent commit a commit author, but for Anthropic to decide that it's going to add Claude as a author, then is Anthropic then liable for all of this nonsense?
Yeah, What about Visual Studio Code? Shall we attribute Visual Studio Code if we are using Visual Studio Code to write the code? Shall we maybe put any other, like a brand of my computer to the commit because I'm typing the code using the keyboard from a specific vendor? Should it be attributed? No,
I
As
think
I'm
soon
the
as
keyboard company is like, yeah, definitely.
yeah.
Add us in. Give us some free advertising,
I think as soon as somebody can figure out a reason to give agents like a tax break, we're gonna start seeing lots of agents get personhood.
Yeah, I think that like circles back to your article in the very beginning of the show, Paul, where Anthropic was talking about how their AI has a constitution, experiences anxiety and stuff like that. They're really pressing that it's a person and it has feelings, thoughts, and opinions, which is just not true right now.
It's not
right?
true.
Yeah,
It's just not
it
true.
can be very rude person if you make it.
That's
It's
true,
crazy.
Almir. That's very true. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that kind of comes full circle with that, right?
Perfect.
I'm gonna bring up the financial frenzy side of all of this, and I posted maybe in the private chat. If you scroll up to the very top, the 15 to 22x cheaper. I am active. I'll be honest. I'm actively rooting for these companies to collapse. They stole everything from people. As you said, the training data is just stealing more stuff from people. There's no attribution. They've shown to be liars. They've shown to use fear and propaganda. And now we know where this goes. I mean, the inherent bias that gets added in over time. But I'll stop on that and just to get to this. So GLM 5.2, open source models coming out of China. Obviously, we don't know the training set that they're using. That has, there could be other biases. I'm sure there is, right? That's included in all this. The same way that the U.S. models will have that as well. Simply because you have the different perspectives of nation states as well, sort of baked into this stuff, and that's sort of a conversation we're not really having yet, but we're definitely going to have in the future. And it's going to be extremely subtle, and it's going to be scaled across millions of, or billions of humans. But in this case, they were running a test side by side. In the result is to sort of crunch what happens here. And this is not the only one. You can find countless of these examples. It comes out to 15 to 22 times cheaper. And that is a significant. This is against Claude 4.8. We don't have Mythos anymore because they banned it for being too dangerous to release, as the podcast title is. And now we have, I think, Codex 5.6, but they're also saying that they're doing it in limited batches and it's very controlled. And now the U.S. government has their hands inside of it for whatever reason. My first thought goes, this thing that allows you to, I could ask any of the LLMs right now, and I think this is where it's a slippery slope. How do I make this a very short rant? They always make it more neutral at first. I'll just say it that way. It's always meant to be neutral at first so that people see value in it and so on. And then they slowly at the edges tweak until eventually, you can't. I saw someone say something about can GLM 5.2 talk about some of the stuff that's happened inside of China in the past, like I think it's Tiananmen Square is one of them. And how much of that, how much was the Chinese party actually involved in the release of this in terms of what training data could and couldn't be included around key topics. And maybe they were actually faster than the US here in terms of the US getting involved with the frontier labs out of the US in terms of what can and can't be talked about, right? Because we do have people that are in positions of power. They're the authorities. They want to keep that power. And now we have a machine that can kind of give decent answers to people when they start asking the wrong questions, right? About than the power structure would want. So in this way, why is that important? Because all of the financials that hold up these companies and the semiconductor industry, the technology industry, and the a little bit wider, and especially with the SpaceX IPO, and now OpenAI was going to do one right after, but now they're delaying it into 2027 because it seems like maybe it's not good timing. And now we're seeing something where, hey, comparable performance, open source weights coming out of a completely different country than the United States that's doing it on a fraction of the budget and Now, what is your moat, right? We already know the model side is a commodity. We've known that for a long time, but it was like the information, like the evidence had to catch up to sort of the theory, I guess, right? So the theory was these things are going to be a commodity in the future. Now we can very much see it's definitely a commodity, and at that point, if you have the harness that's around the model, so this is like all the things that actually make Gary Marcus talks about, neurosymbolic AI. So the idea that the model can only take you so far in isolation, but then once you start adding in tools and different deterministic code around that model, it increases the performance dramatically. Well, we had a client recently in the past, where I had a pretty strong argument around the fact that the model is a commodity, and a lot of the differentiating value comes from everything that surrounds it. They didn't believe me, but I think now it's coming more and more that direction, and it kind of makes sense, as time goes on. So you take something like GLM 5.2, you take something like DeepSeek, and whatever comes out in the next like 3, 4, 6 months from that side, you wrap it with a really good harness, with really good coding that works and helps make sure that the result is less of a probability in that case, right? And I think that just to go into one point, I wrote it down in a sticky note. So why does this matter? Well, just really quickly, what is the AI bubble, right? And what bubbles are is a concentration of investment, of capital, money flowing into one specific sector. It happened with the railroads during the build out. It also happened with fiber optic cables in the late 1990s, right before the .com bubble. It wasn't that the technology, it wasn't that the internet was false or wasn't true. It was that the build out outpaced the demand, right? So initially, what ends up happening is that you have more demand than supply. Prices go up. Then the supply and a bunch of new players all come on the market to try to fill that supply gap because there's money to be made, right? That's how the capitalistic system sort of operates. As they start to fill that gap, the costs go down, right? And naturally, prices sort of reprice. The problem is repricing in the terms of where the whole market is at inside the U.S., but kind of more in the U.S. than other countries. That repricing factor can just set in motion a domino effect. And so what it kind of comes down to at its core side is our entire economy, but a lot of the global economy is run on debt. And the ease of adding new debt, I think about it like coal into an old train, right? You got to keep adding more coal into this train to keep the train going, right? But what happens once you run out, right? It's like the train stops. Like you can't just conjure it up, right? And so I feel like you have people like Google, Amazon, Meta, that their free cash flow is going, negative. These were insanely profitable businesses before. They're burning all of their money trying to chase this rabbit to be first. And now you're seeing, even though they had so much cash flow and they were so profitable, they're going to the open market trying to raise billions of dollars in a race to basically extract as much money as they can out of all of this prior to the locks, sort of locking the wheels up. And so I think where we're at is we've been in this really easy credit cycle for a while, and now we're getting to that final stage. And there wasn't, I saw a thing recently as well, which was showing an open router, which is a way of routing to different models. The frontier labs from the US, like just picking the two, OpenAI and Anthropic, they were 65% of the usage back in, I think it was June of 2025 or late 2025. And now they're encompassing like 25%, right? So that's an insane drop within only 9 months, let's say, and it's just accelerating.
It was only, I think, last month or 2 months ago where Anthropic announced that they will be charging higher prices for access if you use a harness, like a third-party harness, like OpenClaw or OpenPilot or something like that. And people are talking about how do they detect this harness, and it creates a secondary market. And they know that they don't have a lot of stuff that they can really use as a moat, right? The only difference between the model and the user is that harness interface, whether that's a desktop app chatting with it, or if it's all just API usage. But the Frontier folks, they're trying to control it as best they can because they know that's all they got. And it's just kind of crazy to think like you're going to charge more for access outside of your network, I guess, is how they're going to spin it, right?
Yeah. It's very late stage, you know. It's almost. I was trying to think of the right analogy as you're talking of like, how do you wrangle this unwranglable? Like, how many times did they try to control the internet in the past? You know, it's like, and what, like, such a losing race. And I feel like where we're getting to is if open source models with open weights are now able to compete against frontier labs that are insanely in debt and 10 times plus valuations, and they are probably justified, maybe even more. I saw, you know, there's one semiconductor company that's, you know, the price to earnings ratio, and normally in a quote unquote normal market, right, would be maybe like 25 to 30x, and it's at 265x. And you're like, yeah. And then people, you know, and I brought this up on Twitter on one of my anonymous accounts, you know, that I'm just commenting randomly to see where people are at. And, you know, I had people responding back to me like, stay poor and all this stuff. I'm like, dang, okay. Nobody wants to really hear this.
It's giving diamond hands and hodl.
Yeah,
remember,
exactly.
like with Wall Street Bets, it's all the Wall Street Bets people.
Exactly.
Diamond hands, hodl. Like, that is not reality. It is psychosis.
Psychosis. Yeah.
Are you saying I shouldn't short GameStop right now?
Stonks.
Stonks.
It all comes back to stonks.
That would be my I guess like my only, because I brought it up, so I'll just, you know, finish the thought, which is we're at the highest valuation levels we've ever been in the market. It's a weird place to be because a lot of money flew into the U.S. in the past decades. But I don't know. Personally, I'm like, I don't feel comfortable with it. I think we haven't even really seen, for instance, the IPO of SpaceX was what, this month? You know, everything's happening so fast, and already we're seeing the Mythos model being blocked. What was that? A week ago or 2 weeks ago? It feels like it was.
Yeah, Fable was just last week. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's crazy how accelerated all this stuff is, you know, you have to keep finding more and more people to. I guess they would say more and more suckers, you know, to buy your thing, right? Go ahead, Elmer.
Justin Bieber paid like $2 million for image of monkey, I think.
Yeah.
Oh man, just thinking about those NFT bros.
I have a photo. I snuck into
the best thing. That's actually the best thing of that. I love that because I know people who had those NFT monkeys, and I keep reminding them about that, and I even keep the monkeys photos in my next to their name in my phone.
There's a Wall Street movie with Shia LaBeouf and I can't remember the other guy, but at one point, you know, he's trying to win over his girl, like he's engaged this woman. I think maybe they're gonna get married, and then this guy's like, you know, Wolf of Wall Street type of person, and you know, he's trying to impress him and so on. Goes up into his condo, and then on the wall and this guy went to jail for like securities fraud and stuff, right? But he goes into his condo, and on the wall it has the tulips from the tulip mania that happened in the past. And your NFT comment about having that there, it's a good reminder about how euphoric bubbles can build and go way longer than people think, and then eventually just go to zero. And it's almost like, how could this possibly go to zero, right? And I feel for all the people that are out there, and obviously we don't have the reach to be able to communicate to the larger population. But I would express caution, you know, be cautious, because I think out of all the conversations we've had here, the promises that are coming out of the frontier labs, the media, the people that are trying to get your money and get you to invest your life savings or whatever you have, that this is like just a money grab, you know, and it's not going to last. I mean, how do you steal the work of millions of people that were producing this stuff, like you said earlier, Paul, without thinking about something later, kind of scraping it and turning it into this monstrosity? How do you do that, lie so many times, and then eventually make it out on the right side later? And I don't think anyone's really thinking about how this goes on into years into the future. But I mean, you know, and even the data center side, right? Like it's making noise. You know, I saw Elon posted something on one of my anonymous accounts. I commented, I said he retweeted a statistic about data centers only using 0.3% of the water daily across the entire country, and sort of saying like, true, see, it's not that big of a deal. And I was like, and I commented and I was like, this is actually misleading and false, because what you're doing, you know, it's not false. I said it was misleading, and the reason why is because it doesn't account for where the data centers exist. You're taking an average across the entire country, but what about the small town where their water reservoir, and or maybe they're in a drought? Like I know there's tons of data centers across Texas, and we don't have infinite water, and so it's like that wasn't factored in at all. And it's like, yeah, sure, in your total countrywide statistic, it's only 0.3% of water use. But in this small town that doesn't have anything, it's extremely noisy. It's causing electricity costs to go up, and it's using a limited supply of fresh water that's owned by that town, right? Because they may not have the Great Lakes right next to it, right? So it's not an endless supply. And as you know, many people say, you know, water is local, right? And so it's just, you have the person that's a trillionaire, SpaceX, Tesla, all these things. And, you know, and then he's saying things like this, trying to justify it. And it's like, you know, I like Elon because he's an innovator and he's clearly like a multidisciplinary sort of genius, but he's also a con man. You know what I mean? He's a confidence man. That's where the root of that word comes from. He gets people to buy into things that do not exist prior to it, so that he can then accomplish the things that he wants. And it works until it doesn't. And I heard someone earlier on a podcast, I think it was the Diary of the CEO, and there was this 87-year-old guy on there he's been in the markets for 60 plus years. And he was talking about the fact that when he did this stuff with Tesla prior, where they didn't have the valuation, they didn't have the factories, they didn't have the output, and he went out there and he sold the dream to the public. But at the same time, we were in a cycle where credit was easy. You could keep getting more and more loans to build this stuff out. And it was in a bull market where everything was going up. And what he did is, as the valuation for Tesla went 5x plus, he sold his shares, used that money to actually build the factories out on the side that then ended up helping create this whole thing to happen. And so it's pumping the valuation up with the dream, selling out, then actually trying to build the factories to make it happen, and then rinse and repeat that cycle. And obviously, you know, Tesla, you know, has been able to do full self-driving. They've made some pretty good products. Obviously, they're a great company, but the way in which that was constructed is wild and not normal. And now the idea is, well, he can just replicate that with SpaceX, except we're at all-time highs in the market. There's not that, they don't have that runway. We don't have 10 more years to,
Real quick, because we could get into it, but the SpaceX IPO was purely an AI play. It has, like, in their prospectus, it has barely anything to do with the actual rockets. And I'm more concerned with them privatizing the net of air in space for their satellites than anything else. Like, on the ground, we have ham radio. Like, we have a very good, it's not great, but like, regular people, the government has made it such that the airwaves have to be, you know, slotted out, allotted, and there's some commercial licenses and stuff like that. But the normal person is not going to be able to compete for scientific instruments in space or, you know, space satellite stuff, because the SpaceX stuff is going up there and they're just going to privatize it all first. And that's what worries me.
Yeah, another one to the list. They said in that prospectus for SpaceX's IPO, part of their strategy was to mine off of asteroids. And you're like, yeah, so it's like, it's just a pure fantasy. None of this exists, right? They haven't even proven the tech to run a data center in space. None of that exists. And it's like, so they have to do all these hurdles and they have to get all money in. But, you know, back to the point, we're seeing the initial cracking structure, and we're already seeing inflation increase. It's been
Yeah.
increasing. They just don't tell the truth, obviously, but it's been increasing for a long time. We all know that. We can see it in our grocery bills and everything else. But now it's like even the federal government's inflation numbers inside of the U.S. are starting to reflect this more accurately. And as this continues to go on, it just makes it where it's harder for them to cut interest rates. And just as like a quick thing, it's a mechanical structure. So if they cut the interest rates, it just means that it's costs less money to take out loans, which means it's easier to have more credit. As more credit, more expansion. And then as they tighten, as they don't reduce the interest rates, or as they increase interest rates, it just makes the credit tighter, and people sort of lock up and the economy locks up. But in a system where you need a constant flow of more and more money to just be piled in, as that tap starts to be turned down or almost off, it's like that's it. You know what I mean? It's like if it's the gravity of a rocket going up and then slowly hitting that point where the fuel runs out, right? It's like there's only one way for it to go. So I would say this: if you don't believe me, just do the risk reward calculation, right? Risk reward calculation of how much up could you get and how much down is possible. And if you want to know how much down is possible, look at the different crashes across history. 1929 inside of the stock market here in the U.S. Obviously, there wasn't as much regulation, so we can say, okay, but what about 1988 in Japan with the Nikkei index, right? Where it hit all-time highs, super big bubble around consumer electronics. Japan was making like everything at that point. All the money flowed into Japan. It crashed, and it took 20 plus years. They call it the lost decade, but it was actually 20 years before things started to recover there. And it wasn't until 30 years later when those similar prices in the Nikkei actually were hit. And that actually didn't happen until like 2024. And now the Nikkei is up like double from where it was. But that's how this stuff can happen, you know? And so, you know, just express caution. And also, you know, I saw another show. Last thing I'll say, because of the SpaceX IPO, and I know a lot of people that are very, they saw this stuff because even like Fidelity, they dropped their requirements for how much you need to be able to invest into an early IPO just for this moment to try to get that money out of retail investors, so just average investors. And so, you know, yeah. And I heard one more thing, which is, okay, so this is
like, I can't believe how bad of a deal it was, even for Wall Street.
Yeah.
Wall Street gave up a ton of leverage points to make this thing happen, and they left most of the control to one person.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
You can like point to like 12 people on the planet who are like making things worse in a lot of different aspects, and be like, you are, you know, this is on
Yeah.
you in specific
It's
ways.
not. What blew
This
my
is
mind is that like
Let's
not
be
even
brave,
Wall
it's a
Street
tradition.
made Wall Street had to make concessions to make this thing happen so that they could give retail investors this slice.
Exactly. And we haven't seen the worst of it. So, I mean, it went up to around like 225, and now it's back to its IPO price. And so people that bought in, you know, 2 days after, right, when it was going up, you know, pre-market hours or after hours, and it was up 20%. And now it's all the way back at where it was at the IPO side. But someone can make the argument, oh, well, it'll go back up, and you know, et cetera, et cetera. But the valuation side, so the valuation of how you actually price businesses, it should be closer to like 200, let's say 200, 300 billion, right? Not $3 trillion. Definitely not 2.5 trillion, not 1.75 trillion. It's like 90% off the current price is probably where it's more like fair market, right?
You just have to think, is it 10 times Apple?
Yeah. They have
I mean,
no
like
they have no revenue.
I was trying
No
to do
profit.
the napkin math on it, and it was like, you want to raise a valuation and a capitalization of something like Apple that took 40 years, and you want to do it in 6 months, but at 10 times that. That's the number.
Exactly.
That's
And
insane.
they showed a forward forecasting. If you look this up, it's the IPO chart of companies that went IPO over the past 2 decades, and what the average result was after like a year. And on average, they're down like 50%, right? So I mean, like you're really like you're playing with the biggest gamble ever with an IPO. And why is because why did they take it to the market now? That's what people don't ask the question. Why are they giving you this opportunity on a silver platter at this moment, right? If it's so great, you know what I mean? Why would they give you this moment, you know, to
Because
get
he's a
into it?
humanitarian.
It's because they're selling it when it's the hottest
He's fired,
possible,
man.
right? You know, so
It's for
they're
the
good at what they do,
everyman.
you know? They're
It's
good
for
at what
the
they do.
every person, clearly.
Exactly.
Clearly. Well,
So
wow, what a show we've had today. I don't mind getting into the financials of it because it does bring us back down into reality. It has us questioning whether we are delirious, whether we are in psychosis, whether we are in denial of reality. The financials pull us back pretty quick. And with that, we have been going on. We're a little over time this week, but we really did have some great conversations. We found out that AI is just too dangerous. It should be put back in the bottle. Ryan's going to go back to hand coding. I'm just going to scratch bits into magnetic platters, ones and zeros directly, And we know that my images have been stolen and sucked up by the big robot brain, which is always fascinating to find out live on air. And with that, thank you all so much for coming and joining us today. Thank you, Ryan, for being on here. Thank you, Jonathan, for manning the production and bringing always such a good, outside take on things. And Almir, thank you so much. We've been on so long. I think the light has faded in your room. And we really appreciate your time. And to everybody watching this now or later, check out SLS.guru because we're not cracked on AI, but we do a great job at just making good software. Peace.